When you talk about the wrestlers who really changed the face of the business in the 1980s, you've got Hulk Hogan, who did it in New York with the great Vince McMahon machine behind him, and you've got really the Road Warriors. I think the only other ones that are really on that kind of a par as far as changing the very nature of professional wrestling and the way that it was seen and the way that it was absorbed by the masses. And they did so first in the territorial days, and then for a couple of years in Crockett, the second biggest promotion in the country, not nearly the platform that Vince had. By the time they made it up to the WWF in 1990, they were already very well-established superstars. So it's a pleasure to have on the program one half of that tag team. And as I said, we appreciate having gotten the autographed copy of the book, The Road Warriors, Danger, Death, and the Rush of Wrestling, as I hold it up to the cameras here, our high-definition cameras. And so I can only be speaking of on the phone lines the legendary Road Warrior Animal, a.k.a. Joe Laurinaitis. Joe, pleasure to have you on the program tonight, sir. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hey, guys, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Hey, it's good to have you on. I was joking with you off air the other night about the first time I saw you guys in person, 1983, Cleveland Public Hall. I believe it was November of '83, and I was joking about that. I hadn't quite gotten the memo yet that it was okay to cheer for the bad guys. I was cheering for the Sawyers at the time. It was very interesting, though, that when you look at the course of the next 2 years or so, until you had that big match with the Koloffs at the Great American Bash, that really, or not the Koloffs, because Nikita was in the title match. I guess it was against Ivan and Crusher. But the match against the Russians, even before that really kind of showed, didn't it, that the people were ready to cheer for anti-heroes. Everybody always talks about Steve Austin being a man of his time and place in the late 90s, but I think when you look at the Andersons in the 70s, what happened after you guys with the Four Horsemen in the 80s, certainly you guys when you were bad guys in the 80s, people were ready to get behind something like that instead of just the white bread baby faces, weren't they?
Well, everybody thought that the X division started with DX. Mm-hmm. And Hawk and I were your real true first guys of the X division, if you think about it. Mm-hmm. We were the two rebels with the Mohawks, two rebels that went out there, and we're the guys that say what we're going to do, and we do it. Two guys that went out there and just stomped and kicked some serious tail, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we were like the anti-wrestler. We were like the anti-guy, the anti-establishment, pretty much, And then at that particular time, it was a product of the people, because the people were anti at that time. You know what I mean?
They were. And they were clearly ready for something like that. And it's interesting because the things that I didn't really realize watching as a kid, and then, subsequently, learning a little bit more about the business, albeit from the outside, but understanding why things work a little more the way they did. Reading the Apter mags back in the day, there was always this notion of why didn't they pair up you guys in the Rock and Rolls? It became very clear, and I don't know if you guys ever wrestled them when you were in Pro Wrestling USA, and I haven't seen any indication anywhere that you did, but you were never paired up when you were at Crockett. You never got a crack at the tag team titles when they held them, and it becomes clear in retrospect why that was the case. There's no way that both of you could have come out of that as money-drawing babyface tag teams, because either you would have had to have squashed them or they would have done something that would have killed your heat, right?
Well, actually, we did at
really?
one time. We did wrestle them in a tag. We wrestled them in a three-way tag.
Oh, okay.
The Freebirds, Hawk and I, and the Rock and Roll Express. And I'll tell you a funny story about that match. We were in the New Orleans Superdome, working down there for Bill Watts. I've got a big tag team tournament deal, and all of a sudden, I get in there with Terry Bam Bam Gordy, and we're beating the crap out of each other like we usually do. We're not press slam them, already power slam, all this stuff. Ricky Morton tags in.
I don't care.
All of a sudden, I grabbed Ricky. I grabbed him in the headlock. I said, Ricky, throw me in the ropes, duck my clothesline, duck my elbow, hit me with two drop kicks. Hawk will come in here with a drop kick. He goes, what? I said, yeah, do it. Boom, 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 boom. Ricky looks like $1 million. He's the only guy standing in the middle of the ring by himself. Now, here's the only 165-pound soaking wet guy standing in the ring by himself, and he goes, you SOB. You guys do know how to wrestle, man. You got every guy in the locker room there scared to death. You guys know how to wrestle. So that's a little rib I pulled on Ricky Morton.
Oh, that's tremendous. So before you guys were in Crockett together, I got to track down a copy of that match somewhere. That's tremendous. I got to ask you also.
We were actually, to be honest with you, we were actually with Crockett at the time. I don't think we signed our contract yet, but we were doing shots in and out for Crockett. And what we were doing, we were going in there when the NWA and UWF was doing stuff together. That's when we all worked together.
Oh, okay.
But at that time, they kept us away from each other because those guys were kind of like the girly tag team. You know what I mean? I mean, like the young girls and kids loved them, and then we were just kind of like everybody over 15 years old came after us. You know what I mean?
Different fan bases altogether. Somebody I got to ask you about, Joe. A point of personal privilege. A guy that was my favorite wrestler back in the day, and it might sound unlikely to say it, but I think the most popular wrestler at my high school, because we appreciated a good blue-collar guy like that, Ronnie Garvin, who, as I was doing a little bit of research here, the only guy to take both the national tag team titles from the Road Warriors and the world heavyweight title from Ric Flair. There's been a lot of revisionism in recent years. How did that guy ever become world champion? Which I always thought was a bad rap, because it not only took away from how over he was, but everything that all of you guys did to build him up. Anybody that was in the ring with him, the way that you guys sold for him and everything, it really was a team effort to make the guy look like $1 million. But as far as I'm concerned, you guys all succeeded, because he was over back in the day.
Yeah, the hand of stone, man. He was the man. I mean, listen, Ronnie was great. If anybody ever came in there and took one of his punches to the forehead, you know how the guy was put in the world champion spot, because he'd nail the crap out of you. You know, and another thing with Ronnie, there was a time when we were leaving Georgia Championship Wrestling, going to the AWA, and Ole Anderson asked us to do the favor, and Ronnie Garvin and I think it was Jerry Oates. Or Ted Oates, it was Jerry Oates, and he said, "Hey, you mind dropping the titles to these guys?" And then we said no, because Ronnie would have done it for us, and vice versa. So we just did it for Ronnie and Oates. It was no big deal, and it's part of the business. That's the way the business was built back in the day. You came in there, you helped help to draw money, and then you dropped the belts on your way out. And that was part of the old school philosophy.
Now, as far as the way that the business went back then, and the booking decisions that were made and everything that went along with that, there wasn't a tremendous amount in the book about this. So I'm surmising that you guys weren't probably much involved with the politics of the day, because you didn't talk about it as much. But were there ever any times when you guys kind of got caught in the crossfire a little bit politically? I know that Arn and Tully and Ric Flair subsequently have kind of expressed that they had a little bit of impatience with some of Dusty's booking. I know that Dave Meltzer at the time thought that the Dusty finish at Starrcade 87 kind of killed Chicago as a money-drawing town for the NWA for a while. So, and you guys didn't get the tag belts until later in 88, albeit there was a strong argument that you guys didn't need them to draw money. So did you guys ever have any concerns back in the day, or were you ever kind of caught in the crossfire of between anybody else and Dusty with their concerns?
No, man, not in the NWA. We weren't caught in any of that. I mean, we were caught in a little bit of problems when Jim Herd took over, because Jim Herd was a blithering idiot.
Mm-hmm.
When he started running, he was a Pizza Hut manager, and he should have just stuck to that. But other than that, Jim Herd's actually forced Paul Ellering to go into retirement, because he just said, "I can't take this anymore, guys. This guy's a moron." And the business is not that hard. We had a little bit of a deal with Vern Gagne and the AWA once. The match with Garvin and Regal, with the Fabulous Ones, they wanted us to drop titles, and we were just getting our reputation as the bad Apple Street Fighters, and they wanted to do the switcheroo finish, like we go into a four-way, slam to one, the other one reaches out from the outside, pulls the other one out, and goes and lays with the imposter, and just roll us up. I said, I'm not letting him roll us up. Like, that's ridiculous. And that's what we said. We went back in the locker room, and Vern was pissed off. Nobody changed the finish on me in 50 years, and kept yelling and yelling and yelling, and I basically said, well, first time for everything, I guess.
Well, it's funny, Joe, because you talked about that in the book, and I had previously heard about that when they put out the AWA DVD compilation a couple of years ago from WWE. I guess the obvious question that comes to mind is, why didn't Vern go back to that on another card there? I mean, somehow or another, his mind got changed. There was a good period of time before you guys did end up dropping the belts to, I guess, what was it, Regal and Garvin that took them eventually. But why do you think it was that Vern moved off of that idea?
Well, I think he finally realized it wasn't going to draw any money.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, the bottom line was draw money. And you look at the time back then. The AWA was doing great business. And unfortunately, when we left, the business started going down. But that's the nature of the beast. That's what kept the Road Warriors alive. We just kept our goal was to go all over the country and give the fans what they wanted to see, what they were paying to see, their money's worth for the hard-earned work, and some people were budgeting their paychecks to be able to go to wrestling matches, and we just thought it was to their best interest to give them what they wanted to see.
Yeah, and you guys always did. I mean, you guys really were, people who people were paying to see very much back in the day. As far as going up to the WWF in 1990, subsequently taking the tag belts at SummerSlam in 91, I remember as a fan sitting there watching that thinking, because the AWA had just gone down in the last year, and it had sort of moved toward this world of the NWA, the WWF, and then a bunch of other smaller entities. I remember thinking to myself, wow, these guys just did something nobody else is ever going to do. There's no more AWA. They've won the belts in all three places. Obviously, you talk about that in the book. It's the first thing that you mentioned towards the beginning of the book, talking about that night and everything that led up to it. Was there a sense in your minds, in addition to we've gone up to New York, we've won the belts in the biggest place, was there also a sense of, in your mind, we've just done something nobody else is ever going to duplicate because the business is different now?
Well, Paul Ellering told that to us as we were going out to the ring. He goes, you guys realize no other tag team has won all three major championships. And we just go, really? I said, we never really thought about it. And, once we did, it was actually a thrill. And even though the business is a work, it was a thrill to win those titles, to be trusted by the biggest promotion in the business at that time, and still is, that we can carry the load as a tag team that represents the company. And that was the main thing. We just wanted that kind of respect from the bosses.
Absolutely, and I've got some things I want to ask you about as far as your perspective with Vince McMahon, but before I do that, somebody who obviously factored in very strongly to that because it was a strong source of friction between you and Vince McMahon over a period of time, some of the antics of your partner, Mike, Road Warrior Hawk. It was a thing. I was trying to describe this to somebody the other day, a friend of mine that I was talking to, in terms of having read the book, because I come from the same perspective on matters that you do, Joe, and I want to commend you for putting out a good message these days with everything that you're talking about with the role of God in your life and everything, and eventually how Mike found God. And I remember saying to my friend, it's a weird thing with Mike, because you can't call it a happy ending. When anybody dies that young, you can't say that. But it's not a happy ending, but it's not a sad ending with the guy either, because it's laid out in pretty good detail in this book, all these problems and hassles and everything that happened through the course of his life. And yet he found peace at the end of the book. He found God, and clearly he's now in a better place. So it does seem like it's one of those weird kind of stories here. I mean, it must be kind of bittersweet to think of him, how he turned it around at the end, and of course, yet he's not still here physically today.
Oh yeah, you spend that much time with a person, you're together more than your own married spouse. You know what I mean? Hawk and I were together some days or 300 days a year, same car, same traveling, same hotel. So you end up you have a fond respect, and at that time when Hawk was getting suspended, it was just the person's an evil beast, and he suffered from that. And you look for any kind of vice to suffice that emptiness, and his just happened to be drugs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's you address in the book that the different would-be variations of the Road Warriors, the alternate ones, whether it be Sasaki as part of the Hellraisers back in the mid-'90s there when Hawk tagged up with him, whether it be the partners that were more or less forced on you by Vince, whether it be Heidenreich or whether it be Droz. The one thing in the book you didn't touch on as much, and I'm wondering at the time if this was a false rumor, I remember the Aftermags, after Hawk left in 92, talking about that Crush was potentially going to be getting put with you. And that would have, even for the incestuous business of pro wrestling, to have your friend Barry Darso's tag team partner put with you, that really would have been strange. After battling Crush and Demolition, after battling Darso with Demolition and the Russians there, did that almost ever come to pass? I mean, had you not hurt your back, would you have been partnered up with Crush at the time?
Nah, we wrestled a couple of times in Japan together. That was about it.
Okay.
I don't think it was going to go. It wasn't going to go any further than that.
I was wondering about that. Yeah, I got the sense.
Well, it was a good idea at the time. You had two of the top tag teams in the business. Well, we'll take one person of that, I think if Crush would have been more experienced, a little bit more smooth, or maybe a little more street savvy, it would have worked, but not the way it was.
Yeah, it would have had the sense of being a hodgepodge at the time, but largely because of the way that Mike left kind of abruptly. I guess that's what they were left with, different bad options to pick from. I'd like to get a sense, because you've gone full circle, it seems like a couple of different times with Vince, with the comeback to the company in the late 90s, subsequently the very short-term comeback in 2003 where you guys were there for Raw, and then were supposed to be there for a SmackDown taping as well. But with coming back to the company subsequently, leaving it again kind of abruptly when you were let go at that time, and then now being in the Hall of Fame this year. So you've been round and round and round any number of times over the years with Vince McMahon. What's your perspective with this man on the way that he operates and his thought process, and what his thought process is regarding you?
Well, when you say that, and the way you just said it right there, you kind of pretty much explained everything. The cream always rises to the top. And it's, I'm saying that modestly, but it always does. Mm-hmm. The cream always finds its way back into the forefront and back into the top dog. Even right now, after the Hall of Fame, the top tag team on the WWE Super Series game, they want to get is Hawk and I.
Yeah.
One of the top. It's just that people don't do that by accident. They're telling you what they want to see. I'm slated to be on the next 4 WWE games. 2 of them by myself, not even with Hawk. So, the people will tell you what they want to see. I never had a problem with Vince McMahon, nor did I have a problem with the WWE. It was all caused by what Mike was doing at the time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a thing that was personal. It got to be personal when you end up making $100,000 less than you're told you're going to make. It gets, it's just business, and I understand the business end of it when a guy's putting in $500,000 or $350,000 into a TV show with you, and you go out there and you disrespect it, and you get tested positive for something you're not supposed to be, and there's all sorts of heat on the company the way it is at that time. But business is business at the end of the day, and you just got to go on with the business. And I knew eventually it'd be on top. I didn't think we'd be waiting this long to go into the Hall of Fame, to be honest with you, but you never know the reasons for that, and I don't even want to speculate what they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fact of the matter is we did. The fans got to see something they've been waiting for years. It was a respect thing. We had 70,000 people give us a standing ovation multiple times giving our speech. So, at the end of the day, it all worked out.
It did. And yet, the thing that was very interesting in your last run with the company, when you were there, of course, it was your brother in the role of talent relations and running that. John, you had alluded to in the book his role at the very end in the situation he got put in with giving you the phone call at the very end. We saw just last night on Raw what a lightning rod the head of talent relations always ends up being when he got name checked in that little speech by CM Punk there at the end. And I'd heard previously in an interview that was done here on the Sports Talk Network, Billy Gunn had related getting his call that he was getting let go on his birthday. So it does seem like Vince kind of delights in putting him in certain positions in terms of dealing with people. And certainly Vince didn't have to make him make that call to you, but it seems like he chose not to let him off the hook for that one.
Well, he did make the call to me.
Yeah. Right. But, Vince could have done that or somebody else. You know what I mean? But he chose to let John do it. That speaks volumes about Vince, I guess.
Sure. It was a little jab, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they think that kind of stuff gets personal and they don't care. It always gets even in the long run. It doesn't bother me, really. I knew myself, my talent as a performer in this business, and, if they needed somebody needed to get their jollies off doing something like that, then more power to them. Let them go. You know what I mean? But, I never heard, all sorts of guys make comments in this business. I heard The Miz made a smart aleck comment about Zubaz on the show the other night. Hawk and I started the Zubaz company. Sometimes guys, what I call that is cheap heat and cheap comments. When a guy's fighting to get over and fighting to stay alive, they got to go to a cheap route to get over. And that's one thing I will say that Hawk and I never had to do. We never had to stoop to the low end of things to be popular.
No, that's true. That's absolutely true.
You guys take the high road. You took the high road on everything, So.
Yeah, and people have really gotten a sense, I think, even before your book came out, when the DVD was done on you a couple of years ago, I think people got a sense of the man behind the paint at that time, and that you were a cool-minded businessman who really knew how to do business here. Something I'd like to ask you about, just in terms of bringing the thing full circle tonight. As remarkable as it seems to me, having known you your entire career as Road Warrior Animal, to a lot of people these days, you're known as James Laurinaitis' father, with his success that he had at Ohio State and subsequently with the St. Louis Rams. I'm wondering what kind of commonality you see, because my dad's a season ticket holder, so I've been to a bunch of games down at the Shoe. You clearly have been down there. The rush of that crowd down there, clearly James is somebody who feeds off of the crowd. I mean, he's an intelligent player and a heady player, but an emotional one, and you can see how he gets fueled by the crowd. Do you see any commonalities out there? Obviously, you were in a work business, as you alluded to, but the role of the crowd is very important in pro wrestling as it is in football. Do you see any commonality there with James?
Yeah, what I see in the commonality with James is his ability to control the crowd and to control the game. What I also see it is when they pull him aside to do an interview after the game. He does it real professional. You know what I mean? James is a natural on the mic. No doubt in my mind he can do the wrestling business. Like, when he gets in the ring and performs, he does the moves like the back of his hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he's very smooth in that, part of it. And right now, if he were part of the second generation action that's going on with the wrestling business, he'd be one of the main stars. Because I just saw James Father's Day weekend. He's 6'3", 262. Mm-hmm. He's in the best shape he's ever been in. Not many kids can jump on a 48-inch box. When he's doing plyos. But as far as the personality for the ring, he was running in the ring at WrestleMania, and was talking to the guys. Hey, if this lockout doesn't go out, I'm thinking I might want to be interested in going to camp. He was throwing all those things around. Right. Decided not to because the Rams would never let him do it. But he does have that desire to want to be the performer. If you notice last year, he started near the end of the season, every time he got a sack, and I think his last 5 sacks he got, he did my double bicep, he did Hogan's pose, he did the Flair walk, and I know the next one he's going to do Randy Orton's deal in the corner. He puts both arms up in the air, so he does throw the wrestling in a little bit with the, you know what I mean?
It's really intriguing. Joe, when you look at it with the second and third generation kids that are out there now, Hennig, Wyndham, etc., or I guess Rotundo, not Wyndham, but it's real intriguing to see him in that same vein and what he could be doing potentially. I know that this book is selling very well, Road Warriors, Danger, Death, and the Rush of Wrestling, and I know you're spreading a lot of great, word right now through your testimony, and just like to give you a chance to put over anything that you'd like to here tonight, Joe.
Well, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. Only thing I'll say is that, get the book. I think you'll see a great insight of what our life was like on the road, the ins and outs, the kayfabe part of the business, the work part, the professionalism. And I think the people will be happy to see there's a different level of that and a different level of respect within the business, you know what I mean? And for each other, the guys. So that's what it's all about. I mean, we always thought that you're only as good as the guy you're in the ring with. And, I like that. That's why I waited so long to write a book. There was a lot of garbage books that have come out there in the past, and I wanted to give people something to have an enjoyable read with and be happy and proud. They said, hey, man, I know these guys. You know what I mean? I watch these guys, and, this is what happened in the book. This is the way it was. And a little insight what it was like when we first went to WCW and they gave us the belts on day one. You know what I mean? Or Georgia Championship Wrestling.
Yep.
And I get asked that a ton of times, so.
Well, and the life lessons that you talk about, particularly towards the end of the book, Joe, I'm right there with you. It's a tremendous message that you're spreading. God bless you, and it's been a pleasure having you on the show tonight, Joe. Love to have you back anytime.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, and everybody else out there. Remember, everything all starts with the big man upstairs. You know what I mean?
That's a great message. God bless you, Joe.
Yeah, God bless you too, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care. Joe Laurinaitis, everybody.